My name is Shannon. I'm 80 years old, and I want to begin with something that I know is not exactly what the title promises, but that I believe is more genuinely useful than the promise itself. The money meant for you is not already coming in the way that phrase is usually meant. There is no amount of money with your name on it that the universe has set aside and is routing toward you regardless of what you do. That is not how money works. That is not how the world works. And a belief in that kind of guaranteed arrival, however comforting it might feel in the short term, tends to produce exactly the quality of passive waiting that keeps the financial life unchanged. But there is something true inside that phrase, something that, when understood correctly and when lived honestly, changes the quality of your relationship with your financial life in ways that actually matter. And that something is worth sharing, because the worry that the title is asking you to stop is real. The exhaustion of that worry is real. The way it distorts your thinking and narrows your perception and makes every financial decision harder than it needs to be is real. And understanding what actually relieves that worry, not the false comfort of believing money is guaranteed to arrive, but the genuine relief of understanding what actually produces financial change, is worth every minute of your attention. Stay with me, because what I want to share today is both more honest and more genuinely useful than the reassurance the title implies. I was born in northern Thailand into circumstances of real material difficulty. I understand what financial anxiety feels like from the inside, not as an abstract concept, as the specific quality of tension that accompanies every purchase decision, every unexpected expense, every month when what comes in and what needs to go out do not quite align. I understand the particular exhaustion of carrying that worry day after day, and I also understand, from the other side of many decades of honest observation, what actually changes it. Not cosmic reassurance, not the belief that the money meant for you is on its way. Something much more specific and much more available than that. The first thing I want to say about the worry is that it is not irrational. People tell themselves and each other to stop worrying, as if worry was simply a cognitive error that could be corrected through sufficient reassurance. But financial worry is almost always a rational response to real uncertainty. The problem is not usually that you are worrying about something that does not deserve attention. The problem is that the worry is consuming attention in ways that are not productive, that it is taking up space where clearer thinking and more effective action could be, that it is amplifying the uncertainty rather than resolving it. And the antidote to that kind of worry is not reassurance that the money is coming. It is the specific, practical reduction of the uncertainty that is producing the worry. The most reliable way to reduce financial uncertainty, and therefore the most reliable way to genuinely reduce the financial worry that uncertainty produces, is clarity. Specific, honest, practical clarity about your actual financial situation. What comes in exactly, what goes out exactly, where the gaps are, what the options are for addressing those gaps. That clarity is not comfortable to develop, It requires looking directly at things that feel safer to look at obliquely, but it produces something that comfort and reassurance cannot produce. It produces the foundation from which genuine movement becomes possible. And here's what I didn't understand then. For many years I carried financial worry in a fog of financial vagueness. I had impressions of my situation rather than accurate knowledge of it. And that vagueness, which felt protective because it kept me from having to confront the specific numbers, was actually amplifying the worry. Because worry, in the absence of clear information, fills in the blanks with fear. And fear almost always imagines the situation worse than it actually is. When I finally looked directly at the actual numbers, the actual reality, however uncomfortable in some ways, was almost always more manageable than the feared version. The second thing I want to say is about what the phrase money meant for you is actually pointing toward when you strip away the cosmic framing. What it is pointing toward, I believe, is a genuine and important recognition. You have real capacity to create value, value that the world around you genuinely needs, value that people will genuinely compensate you for when you create it and offer it and claim it honestly. That capacity is real. It is not guaranteed to produce any particular amount. It is not going to deliver results without genuine effort and honest engagement. But it is genuinely yours, and recognizing it clearly, not as cosmic destiny, but as real and available capacity, changes the quality of how you approach the practical work of building a better financial life. The people I have watched genuinely improve their financial situations across 8 decades of observation almost never did it by believing that the money was already coming. They did it by getting very clear about what value they could genuinely create, getting very honest about whether they were actually creating it and claiming it fairly, and getting very specific about the practical steps that moved them in the direction they wanted to go. None of that was cosmic. All of it was available. The third thing I want to say is about the specific quality of worry that comes from comparing your financial situation to others. This is one of the most corrosive and least useful forms of financial anxiety available, because the comparison is almost always between your internal reality, which you know in full detail, including all its uncertainty and imperfection, and someone else's external appearance, which you see only in its curated and presented form. That comparison is structurally designed to make you feel worse, not because the other person's situation is genuinely so much better than yours, but because you are comparing different things. Your worry about what you do not yet have with their visible version of what they do. The genuine relief from that particular form of worry comes not from reassurance that your money is coming too. It comes from the specific and practical redirection of attention from what others appear to have toward what you are actually doing with what you actually have. That redirection is not about ignoring aspiration. It is about putting your attention where it can actually produce something. And your attention on what someone else appears to have cannot produce anything except more comparison and more worry. You know what surprised me most when I began to genuinely work with financial clarity instead of financial anxiety? How much of the worry was about imagined futures and other people's apparent situations and past mistakes, and how little of it was about the actual present situation that I could actually address. The worry was consuming enormous amounts of attention on things that attention could not change. And when that attention was redirected toward the specific, concrete, available things that could actually be addressed, the worry did not immediately disappear, but it began to have competition. The competition of actual, useful activity. And over time, the useful activity produced enough real change that the worry had less material to feed on. The fourth thing I want to say is about the kind of stopping worrying that is actually available and actually useful. The instruction to stop worrying, delivered without any change in the actual situation that produced the worry, is not useful. It is a cognitive demand without practical support. What is actually available and what is actually useful is the specific redirection of the attention that worry is consuming towards something that can produce change in the situation. Every minute of attention that goes into worrying about whether the money is coming is a minute of attention that could go into becoming clearer about what value you are actually creating, into becoming more honest about whether you are claiming what that value is worth, into taking one specific step toward the financial situation you want instead of the one you have, into looking directly at the numbers instead of managing them from a comfortable distance. None of those things eliminates the uncertainty that produces financial worry. But they do something better than eliminating it. They work on the situation that is producing it, and working on the situation is the only thing that actually reliably changes the situation. The fifth thing, and the most important one, is this. Stop worrying is not possible as a simple decision, but stop feeding the worry is much more available. And the specific way to stop feeding it is to give the attention that the worry is consuming to something that can actually produce the change you want. Not to the reassurance that the money is on its way, not to the comparison with what others appear to have, not to the fear about what will happen if the situation does not change, to the specific, concrete, honest work of understanding your current situation clearly, understanding what value you can genuinely create and are genuinely offering, understanding whether you are claiming what that value is worth, and taking one available step today toward the financial life you actually want. That is the money that is meant for you, not a cosmic allocation that is already on its way. The result of your own genuine capacity applied honestly over real time toward real value creation and real value claiming. That money is not already coming, but it is genuinely available. And the difference between those two things is the difference between waiting and working. And working, done honestly and consistently in the ordinary days that no one else is watching, is what actually changes the financial life over time. At 80 years old, I have no cosmic reassurance to offer you about what is already coming your way. What I have is 8 decades of honest observation that the financial lives that genuinely improved were almost always the ones where someone stopped waiting for the money that was meant for them and started doing the specific, practical, honest work of creating the conditions under which more of what they had to offer could reach the people who needed it. That work is not always comfortable. It is not always fast. It does not always feel like progress in the moment. But it is real. And real, sustained over real time, produces real change, which is more than any cosmic reassurance about what is already coming has ever produced for anyone I have known. Tell me in the comments what one specific thing you could do this week, not next year, and not in the perfect circumstances, but this week, to reduce the financial uncertainty that is producing your worry. The smaller and more concrete, the better. Because the small, concrete, available step is always more useful than the large, aspirational waiting. And if this message gave you something honest to work with, stay close to this space, because the money that is available to you is built one honest, ordinary day at a time.